I guess I'll kind of just start here. What was your relationship with Coach Elliott but before you came on board? And I guess maybe he had said that he had recruited the Pace Academy a little bit. What was the relationship like before, and what were the conversations like as you figured out you might be joining the staff?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, guys. It's always good to be on with you guys here in the Ville, and I'm excited to be back. So I was the head coach, Pace Academy for 10 years, and Coach Elliott and I met back in like 2012 or 2013. He was the area recruiter for my school when he was at Clemson. He was the running back coach at the time. And then I had two really good players there. I had a lot, but these two guys, Andrew Thomas and Jamari Sawyer, he recruited those guys pretty heavy. Andrew ended up being the number one offensive tackle in the country in the 2017 class, and Jamari ended up being the very next year top offensive guard in the country in the 2018 class. So I was fortunate to have those two guys on my squad, and he recruited them pretty heavy, and that's how we actually met. In the first conversation we had, we talked about football for about 10 minutes, and the other hour and a half we talked about life and culture and building a program and just how to be a leader, and how to organize, coaches, just you name it, a bunch of stuff outside of just football. And so he goes on to recruit those guys, and they had great careers. They went to Georgia, and Andrew ended up being the fourth pick of the draft in the 2020 draft, fourth overall pick to the Giants, and Jamari will be getting drafted probably sometime in 2 weeks, and he just won a national title. So it worked out well for everybody. I ended up here working now for Tony, and I think Tony's doing an outstanding job. He's exactly what he was when I met him 10 years ago in terms of the way he handles people, how humble he is, his approach, his beliefs. When I hear him basically sometimes address the team, it's the same things that he and I talked about, 12 years ago, 10 years ago. So he's the same person. I'm delighted to be on his staff.
Hey, Chris, it's Mike from Richmond. Without giving away any secrets, I'm hoping you can help me put together a depth chart here. Who's in your room? Who are you coaching right now? Who are you working with?
I have the defensive ends in the Bandits. The Bandit position is a little bit like an outside linebacker or defensive end type. That individual stands up in the 2-point stance versus being in a true 3-point stance like a true DN would be in a 4-3. Chico Bennett has been a pretty good player for us. Ben Smiley, Mike Green. Those three guys I'm counting on to be big playmakers for us this year, to come in and really do some big things for us that can help us win some games.
And talking to the guys so far, we've heard 4-man front, we've heard 3-man front, we've heard all kinds of different looks from. What have you guys focused on this spring in terms of defensive alignment?
I'm still trying to learn the playbook. So for me, I'm learning like everybody else. It's, the terminology, it's a little different than what I'm accustomed to, but it's all the same things. And I'm just trying to learn Coach Rudd's terminology. And he's allowed me to coach my guys the way he wants me to coach them, but yet still stay within the framework of the defense. But it's not real complex, but it can be complex for an offensive line. He does a really good job of mixing in coverages, mixing in fronts. If you go back and look at Air Force, they were always one of the top teams in the country in terms of defense. What they did last year, I think they won 9 games or 10, and you saw they beat Louisville in the bowl game, and that's what got my attention. The way he did what he did against Louisville and their quarterback, how they bottled those guys up with not nearly the athleticism, and that's no disrespect to the Air Force players, but nowhere near the athleticism that Louisville had. But just they got out coached, and he did a really good job of scheming those guys all year.
When you have a defensive system that can be 3 down, can be 4 down, what kind of challenge is it for your group, for your guys to be asked to, I guess, play different kind of roles?
Everybody has a responsibility. Everybody has a job to do, and if you do your job, everything else will take care of itself, and everyone will end up in the right fits and the right gaps and in the right responsibilities.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Chris, Preston with CBS 19. Sorry about that.
It's all good.
Just wanted to ask you real quick. You mentioned Chico before. He's a guy obviously coming off of an injury. What have you kind of been working with him this spring with? I saw you the other day at practice, you were kind of focusing on him for a little bit there, especially with hand technique. What has kind of been the big focus with him coming off that injury?
Just techniques. I tell the guys all the time, fellas, it's details, it's techniques. You got to become a good technician. Some of these guys are talking about having aspirations of playing in the NFL. I'm like, fellas, my first 5 or 6 years in the league, I was fast, athletic, could run all day, could jump over top anybody, but time I got to the second half of my career, year 7, 8, 9, I had to become a technician, and if you don't become a good technician, you're not going to stay around long. You're not going to be a good football player. And to be very successful, because the athleticism is only going to take you for so long, especially in the physical game like we play. So that's what I've been really trying to hone on to Chico, and the rest of the guys. Be good technicians, technique. Don't be bored doing the routine things every single day. The fundamentals are going to help you become a better player. What is it every day that you're going to become better at? I don't know what it is. You pick it. You figure out something that you want to be better at. And every day you pick something different. And that way you become a complete player. By the time we get through spring and we get to the fall, you find a thing that you want to be real good at every day. And by the time we roll out again, man, you can be as close to a complete player as you could possibly be, because you've honed in your craft every day with something different.
What traits does Chico have that kind of lend him to being maybe a productive edge rusher next season for y'all?
Chico's he's a little twitchy. He's long. He has long arms. He's decent athletically. I wouldn't say he's a super athlete, but he's decent. He's long. And Chico is he's a very prideful kid. He wants to do the right things. He takes constructive criticism pretty good. He had a hard time with me, I think, in the beginning, but now he's starting to learn me a little bit. I'm real big on details and small things, but he's receptive. He wants to be good, and I think that's part of it. I think he comes out here every day with an agenda and a plan.
And then last one for me, a couple months ago, back in December, when Tony was being introduced, you were there and you were talking about alumni support. I mean, at that time, how much of an idea did you have that you would be supporting him in this way on his coaching staff?
I had no idea. I did tell Tony. I said, I'm glad that you're the coach here, and I'm all in now. I'm gonna support the program, whether I'm a coaching or just gonna be a fan or whatever. I told him that I'd be receptive if it was anything he needed me to do and wanted me to do. And next thing you know, I get a call a few weeks later and ask me to join the staff. It's just, for me, I didn't come back to UVA because it's UVA and it's comfortable and I know everything and know everybody. I came back here because I felt like he was the right guy for me to come back here and work for. It just so happens, it happens to be UVA, so it all worked out great. I think I would have followed that guy anywhere besides Blacksburg. That's the only place I wouldn't have followed him to. I wouldn't coach there. I couldn't sell my soul.
Chris Davidson.
Who?
Times-Dispatch.
Who's that? I thought you retired, man. You still working?
I am.
DT, what's up, baby?
Chief said earlier that he wondered if your old video was on black and white. I'm like, dang, are we that old, man?
And you know what I told Chico? Go back and look at that black and white film. You might can learn a little something. If you can be half as good as that guy on black and white, you'll be okay.
Which kind of leads to my question. When you were an accomplished player at both the college and professional levels, is it difficult at all as a coach, as a teacher, to then have the patience with the players as you attempt to educate them?
That's a great question, DT. It can be challenging at times because everybody has their own skill set, and that's part of being a good coach. You got to also be a good teacher, and you can't get mad at a person or something. You can't get mad at a player if they just can't do it. If they can't do it, you can't get mad at them for it. You got to figure out what they can do. They all can do something good, and as a coach, it's our responsibility to figure out what they're good at. That was my mantra when I was the head coach, and that's what I used to always tell my staff. Let's not complain about what they can't do. Let's figure out what they can do. So now I've shrunk that whole attitude down to now my position guys. So I've just had to really slow down and teach these guys some fundamentals, because you coach high school football, and you got to do a lot of teaching and coaching, more teaching, obviously. And then when you come to college, you just assume that these guys know a lot, but they really need a lot of coaching. They need a lot of teaching. And I like the fact that I can see the kids each day progress, get better. And when you tell them something, they go out and do it, and they're happy that it does work. Not because, I can say I told you so. It's more like, hey, if you just listen and you just take coaching, it will work. But, one thing, the old Parcells, comment, he used to say, if the players doesn't trust the coach and the coach doesn't trust the players, it's not going to work. And so I'm trying to earn their trust, and vice versa. I want to earn theirs as well.
You mentioned Parcells. You've been around all kinds of great coaches. Is there a head coach or a position coach whose teaching techniques that you have really modeled yours after?
That's easy. Grow. Outgrow. I mean, that's I've had the fortunate to play for Parcells and Belichick and Pete Carroll and of course the legend here, Coach Welsh. But I mean, Al Groh was my guy. I've learned that guy. He has a wealth of football knowledge. I've leaned on him since I've gotten out of football the last 20 years. Whenever it's a football question that comes up, I'd always call him. Even when I was coaching high school ball, just trying to get his suggestions, pick his brains. I think that's the only guy I can ask him about any phase of football. He has an answer, and a good answer, and a reason why. And so what I did, all I've done is just try to take a little bit from each coach that I've learned, and add my own little personality on it. I'm not making up anything here while I'm at UVA. I've just taken a lot of lessons I've learned from those guys, particularly Groh. I mean, I think that he's been one of the biggest influences and mentors that I've had since I left the NFL. Actually, he was my coach for 4 years, my first 4 years in New England. That's where it all started, and I learned everything.
Yeah. What was it, or what is it about Al that made him so effective in your mind and someone you still lean on to this day?
Coach Groh had a unique way of making things simple, and just how he explained things, of just make it as simple as possible, kind of eliminate what they're not going to do based on this formation, and just narrow it down to what they could possibly do in this formation, and different examples, and it was just a gift. And I wasn't the smartest guy in the room always, but even for me, I could understand the way he would teach things, and it resonated, and I was able to carry it over to high school and then now here at college.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey Chris, this is Nathan Waters of the Daily Press. How are you?
Nathan, what's up, buddy?
I have a question. I read somewhere that Coach Elliott was kind of looking to you to kind of bridge the gap with the culture at Virginia, kind of understanding what it's about to be a part of the program there. I'm wondering what those conversations have been like with him, kind of letting him know what those glory days were like, what it's like to be a part of the program there at UVA.
I think, it was interesting because when Coach Elliott was about to take the job, he called me and asked me, do I think he'd be a good fit? And that, you're talking about a guy who's accomplished, won 6 ACC titles, 2 national titles. He's calling me, asking me, do I think he'd be a good fit for UVA? And that's just him, his humility. Just wanted to know about the school, the culture. Who should we bring on? Who should I bring on board? Give me some guys that could come help bridge that gap. He leaned on me a lot in the beginning, just in terms of the culture, how to manage UVA folks, and the alumni and support. So we had a lot of heart-to-hearts. In the beginning, and we still have some talks about it. And I'll go in his office once in a while and, Coach, I think we need to do this, or we need to do that, or think about this. And he's always open, always receptive. And he went to, this past weekend, we had Black Alumni Weekend here at UVA, and he shows up at it. I texted him and said, Tony, that was huge. So now you're going to get the support of a lot of alum who have never really been involved in football. Now you show up at the alumni function with Carla. That was big. We never had a coach do that. And so I thought that was a big move on his part, just because he wanted to get, intertwined with the alumni, particularly the African-American alumni who were here this weekend. He took his time out of his schedule to spend several hours at the cookout. That's big. That's big.
One more. How have you adapted to the recruiting trail, and what's it like being on the road in your home state, kind of seeing some old friends and people you might not have seen in a while?
Well, the good thing is I don't need a GPS. So I know Mercury Boulevard and Jefferson Avenue, and I just get my schools, and I can just hop in and go. So that's the good thing. None of this is unfamiliar territory. We'll be hitting the road here right after the spring game. When I came out in January, it was neat because I got a chance to see a lot of guys that I hadn't seen since I was in high school. Either they're now ADs, like Lee Martin, who's a Denby High School basketball player, who's now the AD over at Bethel. I had no idea. I hadn't seen him in probably 30 years. Incremenius, who's at Bethel. I mean, guys I hadn't seen since literally I was in high school. And I'd play with the Boo Williams basketball with Lee. And I look up and he's an AD. So just or some of these guys have sons that I'm now recruiting. Getting a chance to see Coach Smith back in January, the legend. So you don't get that without football. You don't get that without relationships. The recruiting part of it for me has been great, in terms of just understanding how to do it and get out there. And everybody's been very helpful. And then I get to go back to Georgia, so I got parts of Georgia as well. So I know all the high school coaches there. And because I was on the other side of it for 10 years, I knew exactly what to expect, how to maneuver, how to handle the coaches. Because I've been on both sides of it now. So because I've been on both sides and I was knee deep into it for a long time at Pace, because that's some really good players, it's been an easy transition.
Hey, Chris, Jerry Ratcliffe, how you doing?
Radcliffe, what's up, buddy?
How you doing, brother?
Good, man.
Chico said that one of your core values you teach them is violence, and that's part of it, being a good defensive player and a good defense. How do you ingrain that into this defense after a lackluster year that they had last season?
You just got to give them confidence. Some of the guys, and Jerry, I'm trying to learn all the players, because some of the guys need a lot of attaboys. Some of the guys you can coach hard. Some guys you can coach hard, but you also got to put your arms around and explain things. I'm still learning personalities, but you got to teach toughness. I didn't know there was such a thing, because the way I came from and where I was brought up, you're tough or you're not. And here we got to teach toughness. You got to instill it. You got to demand it. And you got to create a tough environment. And how you do that is you don't let things slide. You don't let the little things just go unnoticed. And once you do that, I think you create that environment that the kids need to be successful and understand that we're not going to let anything slide. We're going to love on you. We're going to coach you hard, but we're going to be hard on you, and we're going to do it for the right reasons. And I always tell the guys, don't do these things because I tell you to do them. Do these things because it's going to help you be successful long term.
Would you describe this as an aggressive scheme that Rudzinski has brought to Virginia, or?
I think so. I mean, we it's pretty vanilla. Like we don't do a lot of zero pressure. I mean, it's conservative, but it's aggressive. We're not going to be running a ton of like 6 and 7 man pressures where you're going to be playing zero and leaving guys on an island. It's got a conservative feel to it, but it's yet still aggressive. We'll bring some pressure and we'll do some zone blitzes, but you won't be holding your breath every single time. Just hoping we will make a play. He's done a good job of. 4-man pressure. He believes in a lot of 4-man pressure, a lot of 4-down stuff, which is what he likes, and which is good because we got 4 guys going after the quarterback. You got to have dudes that rush 3 guys a lot. We don't have them. You can do that if you're in Tuscaloosa, or Athens.
Chris, it's been a long time since George and TOB recruited you out of Tab. The recruiting game has changed a little bit. What, in your mind, now that you're on the other side of it, what have been the biggest changes? Do you find them on the recruiting?
Social media, easily. Everybody's tweeting and liking and hearting, and I just think it's watered down a lot. I think a lot of guys are getting these stars and who don't deserve them, and then you get the guys here and they can't play. Not any good. That's the biggest difference. I don't think the coaches, I know we're doing it because Coach Elliott is very, very meticulous and intentional on how he's recruiting and not just throwing out offers to kids. We're checking transcripts. We're doing background checks. We're really getting deep into it. We're not just looking at a guy because Virginia Tech offered him, so we're just going to offer him just to stay in the race. We're going to make sure it's the right fit, which is uncommon. Because I remember when I coached high school, I'd have coaches would offer kids and hadn't even seen them, but because one school offered them, they feel like they need to get into the hunt, and I just think that's how you get burnt at the end. You got, you recruit your problems too.